Okay. Uh,
I sat there for a long time.
I know. That's something that just crossed my mind. Like the commitment to the bit.
Yeah. Well, there's like a certain point where you're like, do I take it off? Has it
Yeah,
been too long?
we're live, Gog. Live
That's
and
right.
alive.
Live streaming to the entire world.
Yes. Welcome to an all new episode of Tales from the Dorkside. I am Brad Reed. I am joined by
GOG.
Yay.
GOG.
GOG.
For anybody that might be confused about the spelling of that.
Yes, he's the GOG.
That's
whatever
true.
that means. So, hey, for those who are regular fans of the show, we appreciate you every week listening to the podcast and or watching on YouTube. However you like to do that, we're just thrilled. We're tickled that you choose to join us on these adventures. The last couple weeks have been a little bit hard in the old personal life. So I kind of slowed down on my production.
It's all right. Life happens, my friend.
Yeah. Not all bad, but a lot of things happening. But I did lose my dog Cujo. So I wanted to
sorry to hear that, brother.
I want to give her a quick tribute. She was 14 years old, a black lab. That's old for a lab.
Yeah, that's a good dog life.
Yeah. She was starting to not get along so great as she used to and all that. So it was what it was. But
yeah,
like sometimes I see a lot of people that have like their emotional support animals or their working animals and stuff, and Cujo wasn't like an official one of those, but as an emotional support companion, definitely I could see,
right,
because she was there a lot of times when people weren't.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you know what I mean.
That's one of the great things about animal companions is they're usually pretty reliable for emotional support.
They're forced to love you.
Precisely.
They're forced to stay. They can never leave.
Yep.
But so that's why it's been a little slower on the output for the last couple weeks, but we'll get back into it. It's one of those things too, like when you get out of the habit of doing a show like every week or whatever, you start kind of being like, oh, I'm lazy now. I'm living the good lazy life of not having to edit or anything. And
yes. Having to build back that momentum.
Yeah, I got to do my editing push-ups.
That's right.
And build myself back up. But if you could help us out there by liking, subscribing, leaving comments. There's been a few shows
that subscribe button.
Yeah, smash. There's been a few shows that I don't even know why they've just blown up. Like we got tons of views on, and I appreciate that.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I think it's just our witty banter.
Absolutely, a couple of handsome guys talking about funny things and interesting things.
Yeah. Now, as those who are the diehards, they probably realize that we're not in the same room together today, either by putting their eyes on it or listening. But so that means we don't have a watch along for you just yet, but we'll have one coming out here before too long. We'll have another.
We will.
Because it'll be our favorite episode. Well, it won't. It's not our favorite episode, but it's one I've been looking forward to. The In the Closet episode.
That's right.
Inside the Closet from season 1.
Not the song by R. Kelly.
No. Although we could do like a whole episode on the video and the song and the aftermath.
A deep analysis.
Yeah, deep dive.
That's a different podcast.
Yes. That's a podcast that like we already kind of rate our podcast for like the chance that there might be an expletive or two, because we're a horror podcast, so I'm not trying to pretend like we're not going to drop a few F-bombs, but a lot of the movies
F-bombs.
a lot of the movies that we're talking about, they have that kind of language or whatever, but I just don't think R. Kelly podcast is where I want to be, or where I want to tell people that I'm doing these days.
No.
What are you doing these days? Oh, I do an R. Kelly podcast.
And just leave it at that.
Yeah.
No further explanation.
Yeah. Yeah. That'd be terrible, though. I liken it to a dog drinking out of the toilet. That's probably not the best water you could get.
No.
So we'll leave it at that.
Yep.
But for this week, we do have a couple of movies we wanted to discuss. And one of them is my favorite movie of all time. One of my favorites of all time, The Lost Boys. But we're also going to talk about another movie that came out that year that's a spectacular vampire movie called Near Dark. And I would assume that a lot of people who are fans of horror movies and vampire movies have seen both, but to tell you the truth, I grew up watching The Lost Boys and loved that movie so much growing up. I did not know that anything about Near Dark till just probably in the last 10 years, maybe sooner than that.
Yeah. I knew about it within the last 2 weeks.
You were 2 weeks old when you heard.
Yeah, I was 2 weeks old.
Well, I was hanging out at the tattoo shop, as I am wont to do, as you can tell if you watch the show, you can see. And the guys at the shop, they watch some. They're like me. Like when I'm editing and stuff, I'll throw on like Frasier or a movie or something. I can just kind of have like on. I might not be paying that much attention to it, but and of course, if it's something you've seen a million times, it works even better. But
right.
They had Near Dark on, and I was like, this movie's great. And so somebody let me borrow it. And then actually, my tattoo artist, Travis Griffin at No Regrets Tattoo, he was like, just hold on to it. Just keep the movie. And I was like, okay. So I watched it, and I loved it. I loved it. And I just thought it was such an interesting story, kind of, not story, but just some stuff here about it, because one of the reasons that we probably should have heard about it, Gog, is it takes place in Oklahoma.
Yes, I noticed that.
But the reason we probably didn't hear about it, even though it came out several months after, the year that Near Dark came out, The Lost Boys came out. And so that movie being the cultural phenomenon it was, I feel like, it kind of like I think as time went on, we forget Near Dark and remember Lost Boys. So
yes,
I think we should talk about Near Dark first, even though Lost Boys came out first. Since that one was my favorite, I kind of want to save it for last.
I'm down for that.
But the ultimate question, Gog, and you'll need to turn this over in your mind before we get to this point, but the ultimate question will be which was the better film?
Oh, okay. I have my answer already, but
okay. Near Dark came out in 1987, was directed by Catherine Bigelow. It came out in October of 87. She went on to direct movies like Point Break, Gog, in 91.
Yes.
That was a pretty good movie. I love that movie. They did a remake of that movie too, didn't they? A reboot.
Probably?
I don't remember. I don't think I ever watched that one, and I don't feel like there's probably much of a need to.
Right.
The original one with Keanu, that was a good one. She also did The Hurt Locker and Zero Dark 30, which isn't no connection to Near Dark.
Mm-hmm.
Other than
it's not part of the franchise.
No. In fact, I'm pretty sure that Zero Dark 30 was one of the it's like a military movie, I think based on probably like a true story, something like that.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure I've seen it, but it's been a long time. So, but no, yes, this was one of her first movies as a director. It didn't do that good box office wide either. Okay, box office wise, anyway, I meant to say. They had a $5 million budget on this movie, and they only made $3.4 million in theaters.
Oops.
Yeah. Yeah, as opposed to Lost Boys, which we'll get into a little bit later, but Lost Boys had a budget of 8.5 million and a $32.2 million box office.
Yeah.
So
that's much more of a success.
Yeah, like almost $31 million more than Near Dark. So I wonder, we weren't there. Well, I was there. Were you alive in 87?
Yes, I was too.
Okay. But I wasn't, because I remember when Lost Boys came out, my mom loved that movie. And so we watched it all the time. But I wonder if like Lost Boys was so big in July that by October people were like, because people did probably also back then, I feel like they didn't go to the movies like as often as we probably go now. What do you think? Because I mean, I don't know. I could be wrong about that.
I don't really know because, back then obviously they didn't have streaming services, and I'm not sure where like direct home video was at that point either. Because I know like at one point to buy a VHS tape, it'd be like $100.
Yeah.
If you wanted to own the movie before like rental services became really big and things like that.
I could be wrong, but because like people who lived in like the city or whatever, they might have gone to the movies like every week. But I feel like when I was younger, back in the 80s, like to go to the theater was like a big event, like a big deal.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess like thinking back, we probably went like maybe once a month ish.
Yeah.
Like just depending on what the big movie was. Because I remember seeing, pretty much all the big ones like Jurassic Park and Independence Day. But I also grew up in Duncan, Oklahoma, which is tiny town. So we had one movie theater.
Right. Duncan, I didn't know you grew up in Duncan, Gog.
Yeah.
How many people live in Duncan?
Not a lot.
How long did you live in Duncan, Gog?
I lived there from ages 1 to about 9, I think. And then we moved to Houston. My dad got a transfer.
Oh, okay. That's right.
So I got a taste of the big city life.
So, but from 1 to 9, you lived in Duncan?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And where is Duncan exactly in Oklahoma?
It is south from Oklahoma City quite a bit. I think it's about an hour and a half drive to get there.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, where I lived, Gog, I lived outside because, like, I don't know. I just always assumed you were a city boy.
Yeah,
because you live in.
I come across as a city boy.
Yeah, but where I grew up, I lived in Oklahoma City, but it was so far out because Oklahoma City's huge that, like, when we talked about going to the city, that was like a big event too. Because we lived out in the country part of Oklahoma City, so. They're probably like 20, 30 miles outside of actually where the Oklahoma City is.
Right.
So that's interesting. So this Near Dark movie, again, set in like a small town, Oklahoma. I'm not exactly sure what town it's supposed to be set in.
I don't remember if they specified or if it was just like generally like this is what rural Oklahoma looks like. Farms and such.
But it's a movie about a pack of vampires. And again, it does have like, I feel like maybe somewhere before, and we could probably look this up at some point and somebody might have some ideas about this. But like somewhere before, like I wonder if producers were like, you know what, we need a vampire movie. And they wanted like The Lost Boys, and then that got gobbled up by somebody else. And they were like, well, let's find another vampire movie to make.
Yeah.
And it's got to be about a pack of vampires because that's what they're making over here with this Lost Boys movie, who nobody's going to go watch.
Yeah.
So, because if you notice, there are times that you'll see two kind of similar movies come out around the same time. And,
oh, yeah.
Yeah. But so it's about a pack of vampires out in the country. And one of them, Severin, is played by Bill Paxton, who is just... such a fun character to watch in this movie because he's over the top.
Yes, he's very over the top.
And I guarantee you, if you haven't seen Near Dark, you've heard him somewhere along the way. You've heard his clip of him going, "Finger looking good."
Yeah. Yep.
So, but yeah, it's about a bunch of vampires. They have like one who's a chick vampire named May, and she's kind of trying to trap this guy Caleb. Well, she, I think, he falls in love with her. I think she does end up biting him, and he's starting to turn a little.
Yes.
So as he's trying to make it back to his family, they come and they snatch him up, and his family sees him, which was it was kind of a weird, like that whole scene was kind of funny because like she's the daughter, his sister's yelling at him, Caleb, Caleb, and this RV just snatches him up, and so the dad and the sister go looking for him in this movie, and like they are, they're kind of reminded me. Did you see the movie? Of course, this movie came way before, but did you see Dr. Sleep?
Oh, no, I haven't seen it.
You've never seen Dr. Sleep? Oh my goodness, you gotta watch that. It's so good.
Okay.
But again, it was kind of reminded me of the pack of villains in that movie too.
Mm-hmm.
Another interesting performance was a guy named Joshua John Miller. He's been in several things and has a pretty like recognizable face as a as a child actor and everything. But he plays Homer. He plays a child vampire, which again, Lost Boys had a child vampire as well.
Right. Not to be confused with Homer Simpson,
but
obviously. But
here's a fact, Gog, you might not have known. Joshua John Miller, his brother, Jason Patrick.
Really?
And of course, who played Michael in The Lost Boys.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I saw this kid, Joshua John Miller, in another movie just recently, River's Edge. I was telling you about that with Crispin Glover, because Crispin Glover was so annoying, and the way he talked like he was the grandfather of Blink 182.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, so I hated him, but I love that movie. But Joshua John Miller was like a little punk kid in that movie too. So
yeah.
But yeah, so this movie it's pretty funny because like Homer looks like a kid. He's not a kid, but he wants to steal Caleb's like little sister to make him his vampire wife, basically.
His child bride.
Yeah. Yeah. So
does that make him a pedophile?
Kind of.
I'm just gonna get right down to the nitty gritty here.
Kind of, but that brings up a question I've asked since Twilight, which is, wouldn't Robert Pattinson's character, Edward, I guess, wouldn't he be a pedo? Because
I guess so.
He's hundreds of years old, and he's going to high school to pick up chicks. Now, if he didn't look like Robert Pattinson did at that time, if he looked like a
100-something-year-old man,
would anyone be like, "This is cool to do. This is okay"? Would anybody even watch that movie?
No,
they wouldn't. We need to make a realistic Twilight.
Yeah, just some old ass man going around to high schools.
Yeah.
Hey there, little lady.
I'm a vampire.
You like butterscotch candies?
Yeah. Yeah. He's got butterscotch for days.
Yeah.
But yeah.
What are the kids into these days? Butterscotch candies?
Yeah. That would be awesome. But so, yeah, because like I can't remember the girl's name in Twilight, but she was just a teenage girl, right? She wasn't like, she didn't have any supernatural abilities or anything that made her like older than.
Not that I'm aware of. No.
What about Taylor Lautner? Did you watch these movies? I didn't.
I have not seen them.
I know he was like a werewolf.
The books. Yeah.
Spoilers, I guess.
So it's like one of those unavoidable things. Like, you're going to know things about Twilight, regardless if you've seen the movies or read the books.
Yeah, like they're a bunch of pedos.
Yeah.
And I mean, the women love those movies. Like my mom, my cousins, like all of them went to like I think when the last movie came out, they had like an all-day marathon and of course they look at us and they're like nerds when it comes to like Star Wars or something like that.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
But they're going to line up and go to Twilight all day. If there was another movie that came out right now, they'd be there today.
Yep.
And they'd be celebrating overage men trying to get with high school girls.
Yeah, it doesn't happen in Star Wars. The most controversial thing there is a brother and sister kissing each other.
But
So
I watch Dazed and Confused with my wife the other day, and she's like, that Wooderson, he's creepy. But
the Matthew McConaughey character.
yeah. All right.
All right.
None of these people were in Near Dark, by the way.
we went off the rails a little bit. That's fine.
Yeah, well, we were talking about Homer, the child vampire, but
Oh yeah, that's right.
he wasn't a child vampire in this one. Like in the Lost Boys, Laddie, he was still a child. But in this one, I'm pretty sure, right? Like Homer wasn't young. He was still.
He grabs Caleb by the balls.
Yeah, there was
during
that
one of their first interactions. I remember that pretty vividly.
Yeah. So yeah, because I think he was just made into a vampire at a young age.
As a young person,
but,
and then you don't age anymore once you are vampiric.
Which, for whatever reason, it doesn't matter how old you are. It matters how old you are unless you look as old as you are. That's the lesson we're taking from this.
Okay,
but
that's fair.
So yeah, Homer, Edward, all the vampires, kind of sketch.
Mm-hmm.
Just date the women their own age. Like Interview with the Vampire, though. Like I remember with Claudia, I remember thinking that was it got a little weird. You know what I mean? Like they weren't dating her or nothing like that. But you know what I'm saying? Like
yeah.
Because if you read those books or whatever, she became older but still looked like a child. So it's interesting. But
fascinating.
As far as Near Dark goes, GOG, let's see, it got a 6.9 on IMDb, 83% on Rotten Tomatoes. We said, it did horrible, $5 million budget, $3.4 million at the box office, but it got a cult following. It's available on Shudder right now if you have access to Shudder.
Yeah.
And so it looking back on it, it was a good movie. I think a really good movie. Yeah. What were your thoughts on it as far as, as a vampire movie you've just recently seen?
Yeah, no, I thought about the same. It had a compelling story, and once you kind of get into the whole vampire aspect of everything, it gets pretty fun, and the character is intriguing. I like how they have to fight against time, covering up the windows of whatever vehicle that they happen to be in possession of at any given time. And apparently, a fun fact that I read was that I guess James Cameron suggested to use some of the cast from Aliens. Because him and Bigelow were to be married.
Oh, really?
Uh-huh. So he's like, hey, use these actors. They're really good. So I guess 3 of the actors from Aliens, the second Alien movie, ended up being in this movie.
That's pretty cool. James Cameron, I could see because he's worked with Bill Paxton in several movies as well.
Wasn't Bill Paxton briefly in Terminator 2, was it? Terminator. Okay.
Yeah, when
he's the punk.
Yeah, when he first shows up, and he was in Aliens, right? Wasn't he? Right?
Yes.
Yeah. So that makes sense. That's pretty cool. I didn't really think about that. There was a little bit of crossover with that whole franchise, but God, where would
I will say it wasn't as compelling of a movie as Lost Boys. Just the whole vibe of Lost Boys being in Santa Monica or all that shit.
Yeah,
it's just it's got a little more. I don't know how to describe it. It's just a cooler movie in general.
Well, let's shift to the Lost Boys.
Yes, let's.
Lost Boys again came out before Near Dark. It came out not too much longer, but July 31st, 1987. $8.5 million budget, made $32.2 million at the box office, so it was huge. Directed by Joel Schumacher, who also did some notable movies, Batman Forever. If you remember, he put the nips on Batman.
Yeah.
Also did Batman and Robin. He did A Time to Kill. He did 8mm. He did a bunch of movies. I believe Joel Schumacher has passed since. But those were some of his best ones, in my opinion. 8mm. Do you remember that one? It was kind of like the 7 after 7 came out, and they're like, well, let's do 8mm and put Nicolas Cage in it.
Yeah.
Which, as you know, makes me a fan. And I remember Time to Kill, man, that movie, Samuel L. Jackson and Matthew McConaughey, that movie was great. So, but Lost Boys was huge. And like what we were going to, kind of comparing the movies, it had Jason Patrick as Michael, but it also had Kiefer Sutherland, who was huge at the time, as the main vampire David. And like his whole his whole pack of vampires was like a rock and roll band.
Yeah.
From, that era. They had the long hair. They looked like, if they went on tour, you would have believed it, because they all look like, they had the guy from Bill and Ted's
yeah.
Excellent Adventure. And then, of course, it had the two Coreys. And they were, I think that was maybe one of their first hookups, but like after that, they made several movies together.
Yeah.
That were really, Licensed to Drive, and there's a few different ones that all awesome movies. And so this
also
one
got the iconic saxophone scene.
Yes. I love him. I actually was gonna say I had, because my mom, she loves him so much. And made us watch this movie, because like we rented this movie when it came out on video. We rented it every weekend, like for like a whole year. And I was finally like, Mom, we should just buy this movie, because but the guy who plays the sax, I'm blanking on his name right now, in the song I Still Believe, he Timothy damn it, anyway, I got him to do a cameo for her like last year for like Mother's Day.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And my mom was just like, I can't believe he said my name. I just can't. She loved it. But
that's awesome.
Which came towards the beginning of the movie, because in Lost Boys, these brothers move with their mom. They've been, she's been recently divorced. They go to live with her dad. And in Santa Clara, dang it. Yeah, Santa Carla. Because it's made up. It's not a real actual place in California, which I was devastated to find out, because when I went to
go there.
Yeah, when I went to California, I was like, I got to go to Santa Carla. But I think I can't remember what it's based on, but there is
probably the Santa Monica Pier, I would imagine.
Is that the pier? Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, or I thought somebody maybe had said like Santa Cruz or something, but I don't know.
One of the Santas.
Santa. But they move there, and like you said, they go to the pier. That's like the local kind of hangout where all the commerce is happening, and the hanging out, and they got like a comic book shop there where a couple old hippies work, and that's where the vampires are hanging out as well. And so they come across this concert, and man, did you happen to look up the sax man from the Lost Boys?
I did.
Tim Capella.
There you go.
Yeah, I it's ingrained in my brain. In fact, I'll tell you this little secret about Tim Capella's song, I Still Believe. One time when I worked on the Phil Drew and Casey 2 show here in Oklahoma City on 98.9 KISS FM, we had the Thunder from Down Under came to do a show down in Bricktown. And they were doing some kind of special thing where me, Phil, and Drew, the listeners, had to vote on who was going to open the show with a striptease. And, and I am pretty certain that I didn't win this contest at all, because it was voted on by our listeners. But Phil and Drew, and I don't care if the time or whatever has elapsed here. I'm spilling the tea, Gog.
Okay.
They were like, we don't care. We're not doing it. You're going to do it. And I was like, no. And they were like, basically like, it was going to be you all along. And I was like, hell no, I can't do this. But I did do it, Gog.
I'm proud of you.
I did it. I had like a tiny little pair of basketball shorts, like that I stripped down to. That was like as low as I would go. But I did my dance to Tim Capella's "I Still Believe." And
awesome.
And now looking back, Gog, as a 43-year-old man, that back then I think I was like 23, 24. And I was kind of like, oh, timid, I don't. Now I think I would have like probably gone back and even done it bigger. Like, I tried to do like a crazy show about it.
Yeah,
but back then,
get some pasties on.
Like just go for it. But back then,
not as well. Yeah,
I don't know. I just didn't. I wasn't as confident. I mean, I'm still not, but I would have probably put on a better show this time around.
Your level of giving a fuckness has diminished.
I don't
since
know.
Then.
It's just something about entertainment. Like now, I think I would grasp the the fun part about it more than I did back then, where I was like, I'm shy.
This is gonna be humiliating.
Yeah, exactly. I did make tips though. I made some tips.
Nice.
Yeah. But then I was in like the locker room with the dudes, and they were all like looking at me because they're all like cut and dating each other, and and I'm sitting in there like, hey guys,
what's up?
Yeah, like, get out of here with your pastry eating motherfucking ass, So, but yeah, I that song, one of my faves. But that was another thing I was going to mention about this movie, though, and like what we were talking about, like why we think this one stands out above. But the soundtrack to this movie is also awesome. And it's got some great songs. Not all of them were like done by the original artists. Like Echo and the Bunnymen do the "People Are Strange" cover from The Doors, but they do like this wonderful cover of it.
Absolutely, yeah.
I'm pretty sure Tim Capella's "I Still Believe" was a cover. I think most of the songs on there were. Then there's other songs that, "Cry Little Sister." That song
that was stuck in my head for like 3 days after I watched it again.
Yeah. Well, and that song's been done. Marilyn Manson did that song not too long ago.
That makes sense.
I didn't love it. I didn't really love it. I know other bands that have recorded that song. So but yeah, the soundtrack to that movie was phenomenal, and I think really one of the things that set it apart. And then again, this superstar cast, and even though they might not have necessarily been superstars at the time, like the two Coreys, I think Corey Feldman, of course, he everybody knew Corey Feldman, Goonies and stuff like that. But Corey Haim, I think this one might have been one of his first. For the time for 1987, like this had all the stars. Yeah. And it just had that, like I say, it just had that thing, that pop culture thing that stood out more than maybe in Near Dark, where it's about more like a bunch of country vampires.
Right. So it's probably more relatable to the general movie-going audiences, or not even necessarily relatable, but intriguing, like something taking place in California. Yeah. Just seems more appealing than, like Oklahoma.
Like Lost Boys was the Motley Crue of vampire movies at the time.
Yeah. And Near Dark was the Garth Brooks.
Maybe. I'm trying to think, because Garth Brooks would have been might be, at one point equal to, and maybe I think they even he probably overtook Motley Crue in the sales and stuff. So I'm trying to think
maybe
of like
the Joe Diffie.
The Joe Diffie. Yes. Is he the third?
For people that don't know, he did a song called "Prop Me Up Side the Jukebox."
Did they? Didn't Joe Diffie pass? Didn't he pass away?
Oh, I'm not sure if he did or not.
I wonder if they did. I wonder if they propped him up. Did he? So. Did he also do that?
Was his request.
Was he the "Welcome to Earth, Third Rock from the Sun"? Me and Gog have like a side thing where we love 90s country music.
I actually did, man. When I was in, I think, probably first or second grade, they were like, dress up as what you want to be when you grow up day. And I dressed as a country and western singer.
Yeah.
and I got a letter from Joe Diffie.
Did you really?
Well, it was typed out and it had his signature at the bottom, so it may have been from his assistant, but thanks, Joe.
I gotta look it up now because I don't want to put Joe Diffie down in his grave before he. No, yeah, he did pass away in 2020.
Oh yeah,
yeah, he was from Tulsa, Oklahoma. I didn't actually know that. But yeah,
well, I hope they propped him up inside the jukebox.
Prop me up beside the jukebox when I'm gone. Yeah,
that's it.
Yeah, I remember that one. Brooks and Dunn, they were my faves. George Strait.
Yeah. Boot, Scoot, and Boogie.
See, that's that Duncan, Oklahoma coming out in us.
That's right. I worked an event not too long ago, within the last 10 years, where one of them, Brooks and Dunn, I want to say it was just Dunn, performed at the Cowboy Hall of Fame. And I was joking, saying they couldn't afford both, so they just got one of them.
I've seen Brooks and Dunn. I saw they were getting back together too.
Nice.
Yeah, that is nice.
So for you out there that aren't from Oklahoma, that's a little education on 90s country and Western music from our state.
Yeah, we didn't even get into, like, we just barely scratched the surface. I do want to say though, Gog, Garth Brooks came to the Diamond like a year ago or so.
I forgot about that. Yeah.
And I was never so mad because I worked at this radio station that put on or not put it on, but they were like the partner, and like they were the only way you could get tickets. You had to win them from. And I haven't been so mad I wasn't in radio as I was at that point, because seeing Garth Brooks at the Diamond Ballroom, dude, that would have been that would have been
insane.
Yeah, but that would have been like seeing the Lost Boys in theaters in 1987.
Absolutely.
I did see the Lost Boys. Yeah, I did see it in a theater like a few years ago. It was like around Halloween, and they were doing old movies at the theater, and it was weird because it was missing some of the frames and stuff, and so like parts of the movie would be missing, and I was like. Because my thing is, if I watch The Lost Boys, I can quote the whole movie throughout the whole movie. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that was another thing about that movie. It's so many like lines from the movie that you could quote, like, you know, warp speed, or now I'm gonna fuck it all up because I'm trying to, you know.
Yeah, that's all right. We'll just have our listeners leave a comment.
Yeah. No, he goes, burn rubber does not mean warp speed, and then different, different stuff like that. And you know, there was another thing that like you had mentioned earlier that I like about vampire movies. You said the whole thing where they're having to black out their RV and, you know, get away from the sun and all that. Like, I always think that makes like a really good part of a movie, because like you get to see these other characters away from the vampires and the danger, like they get to loosen up and kind of live their life for a second and get ready for, and then you got that impending doom of nighttime coming, you know?
Right. As like the sun setting.
Yeah.
All of a sudden it becomes like the stakes are way higher.
Yeah. Yeah.
Get it?
Yeah. And I like that. And I think that's one of my favorite parts of vampire movies sometimes. Yeah.
Well, and it, cause you know, vampires are a pretty formidable foe. So if they didn't have some sort of an Achilles heel, like, you know, they just essentially would be immortal and take over the world. But since they have a very specific thing that's like, the sun will kill me, it'll murder me to death.
And so then that, like 30 Days of Night, I think that's why that made such a great comic book series and movie. Cause like you're up there in Barrow, Alaska, where kind of like how we talked about with The Thing, where, you know, just the weather and the atmosphere and all that's kind of trying to kill you.
Yeah.
Then you don't have like this time where you can take a little bit of time and because it's night for 30 days, there's vampire attacks all the time, you know? So I thought that made for a great setup for, you know, a vampire movie. And I think this one, I think a lot of the basic love for this movie also comes from like the family aspect of the movie. with the two brothers who one of them becomes a vampire and the other one, he doesn't want to kill him. He wants to help him. You know, he's afraid.
Yeah.
Because it's not normal to have your brother become a vampire, but he's trying to help him. So then he goes to Corey Feldman and Jameson Newlander's characters, the Frog brothers, Edgar and Alan, and then they bring in like another kind of set of new brothers, but camaraderie between the brothers, and it's a funny setup, you know. And it does say that it's kind of a comedy horror.
Yeah,
I would say it's a horror comedy. I would put the horror before the comedy, but it does have because it's not like laugh out loud, like slap your knee kind of funny, but it does have humorous stuff in it.
Right, like the whole dinner scene. Yeah, where they're trying to like find his weakness and
yeah, where he's like,
they keep doing stuff to him.
Yeah, I bet you hate garlic, don't you? And he's like, it's a little strong, you know.
Yeah,
but it's got the classic scene from when they're trying to tempt Michael to become one of them, where like they're down in like their little vampire lair, and he's like, how do you like your maggots? And they're where they trick him, and he sees the maggots in the rice, and then the worms, and so by the time he does all that, and then he's like, and the girl's like, don't drink the blood, Michael, and Michael's like, that ain't blood.
Yeah, this isn't blood.
Yeah, and so fucks them all up. But those are all just classic scenes. Like as much as I like Near Dark as a vampire movie, it just doesn't have like the Bill Paxton in the restaurant scene was funny, and that's a great line. But I couldn't like tell you all these great scenes like I can with Lost Boys.
Like the train scene in Lost Boys.
Exactly. Right after that, where he becomes, and they all jump off the, and I'm sure how many people you think died trying to do that afterwards?
Yeah.
Because I've seen a few train tracks like in Eufaula and stuff where I was like, ooh, I want to do that there. I'm like, no, that'd be dumb.
I forgot to become a vampire first.
Yeah. But I can't remember what movie it was. I remember there was some movie where like the students or somebody, like the people on the team were like laying down in the middle of the road or something, and like cars would go by them and this was like back in I feel like the 90s or so. But people were doing it and getting killed, and they were like, don't do like this movie. And I'm like, why do people need to be told not to be going and laying in the street?
Because people are stupid.
Because they saw it in a movie.
Yep.
But I bet you somebody tried to do that and lost their lives.
I'm sure. R.I.P.
Yeah. Yeah. Rip to you, living your best life. But that's
really idiotic person. R.I.P.
So you kind of gave it away though in our Lost Boys versus Near Dark. What you're gonna have to go with Lost Boys as the winner, right?
Yeah. I think not to say that the other one was a bad movie, but this one obviously for so many reasons is just a little more of an iconic, fun adventure. Mm-hmm. It just feels like a more fun movie. And back to your point about the soundtrack, like especially like in the 80s and 90s. That was a really big deal for movies, was having a solid soundtrack, because that's just one additional piece of marketing that they can use.
Yeah.
I remember I loved, like, I'd get, the Crow soundtrack on CD, the Matrix soundtrack on CD. It was always exciting to get those because you'd have songs that you knew from bands, but then sometimes bands would put out like exclusive new songs for those albums. And this predates the internet, when you can just listen to anything that you can imagine at the touch of a button. You had to go to the store and buy something, or you had to hear it on the radio.
Yeah. What was the, I'm trying to remember what the soundtrack, Lost Highway. That was a great one too.
Yep.
Because going back to like what we were talking about, where bands would release singles just for those, they don't do it like that anymore. Which sucks. But you're right. Like, I'm sure for this one, this was like, hey, not only is this just a great sound or a great movie, but like I'm sure a lot of people went and bought the soundtrack at the time because it had, like I say, Echo and the Bunnymen and different people on it that were really big at the time. And so I agree with you that's something that I miss a lot is like the special soundtracks for movies.
Yeah.
Thinking about like Smashing Pumpkins, they put out the one song, "The beginning is the end, is the beginning is the end, is the beginning is the end," for the Batman, that one Batman movie. Maybe
That's
it was
right,
the one
yeah,
for
yeah,
Joel
yeah.
Schumacher. Actually, I can't remember if it was his movie or not.
It was one of those because I don't think it was one of the Tim Burtons.
No, I think it was one of the Joel Schumacher movies. So
You're right.
maybe that's something that he was just really good in touch with, was putting his pulse on the music at the time. And because it does suck. Like, it really does suck that they don't
Well,
do
like
that
certain
as much.
filmmakers still do it. Like James Gunn is pretty notorious for,
True.
putting together a solid soundtrack.
James Gunn's one of those, and I appreciate him because like, he'll turn you on to some music you really probably hadn't heard before too. And he used to be a DJ. Did you know that? A radio DJ?
Oh, I didn't. Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it does. It does. And then just one more guy that I can think of. Do you watch Letterkenny?
Yeah.
That's something I love about Letterkenny is Jared Kiso puts in like these bands that are usually kind of alternative but not mainstream bands that like I don't know how to find music anymore. I'm not like a young guy that just goes and hangs out at the record store and is like,
Right.
Yeah. And so I really appreciate when you got like I said, like when they introduce you to music like that in these shows or movies and stuff too. Just some modern people that, like you said, kind of have that love of marrying music with the visuals too.
Oh yeah.
Which I think, like we were just saying, I think is missing a little bit from our lives nowadays. Because I can't think of the last movie that had a huge soundtrack.
No.
I know I remember movies that, have a great song here or there lately, maybe tied to it, but not like, because like The Crow is one of the last ones that I can remember. Maybe I just can't remember the timing though, because like Forrest Gump, but that was back in the day too.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and then that was a collection of like, that was more, I don't think there was any new songs for that record. It was a collection of older, whatever.
Some oldies.
Yeah, oldies, but
now especially oldies.
Yeah. So
classic rock at the time, now ancient rock.
Yeah. I'm trying to think, man. But I can't. I'm coming up short. So, just all these things. Now, I wanted to say a few other, I just wanted to give you a few other, my top vampire movies. The original Fright Night. Have you seen that one from this 80s?
Probably.
It's got, do you remember Married with Children?
Yes.
You remember the neighbor, Marcy?
Marcy
Darcy?
I'm gonna look it up. Marcy Darcy.
Yeah, she's in Fright Night, but she wasn't like. It's funny because she wasn't like the nerdy neighbor character she played. She was like the hot, teenage girlfriend of the teenage star of the movie.
Yeah,
and basically he's got a vampire that moves in next door to him and has his eye on his mom and his lady.
Ooh.
Yeah. And what I really loved about that movie was he goes to like the local TV guy who is his persona is a vampire killer, but he's just doing that to like introduce old movies. And and growing up here in Oklahoma, if you knew who Count Gregor was, he didn't portray a vampire killer. He kind of was like, he never really portrayed a vampire, but like I always thought he was a vampire,
Yeah.
Count Gregor. But he did the same thing. Like he would introduce horror movies on weekends, and then he would do like at Halloween time, he'd be at some local haunted house doing stuff. And so it kind of always reminded me of Count Gregor with the Fright Night movie. And I love that one.
Yeah.
And then, oh man, one of my favorites of all time, and I love the book, Salem's Lot. Oh, hey.
Oh, I got a visitor.
You know what's really, really funny? It threw me off for a second because my cat, Wednesday, is in here somewhere.
Oh, yeah.
And she won't leave, and she's the same color exactly as that cat. And so for a second, I was like, Wednesday, how did you get over there?
Say hi, this is Toot, everybody.
Hello,
Say hi
Toot.
to Tim.
Hello. That's funny.
She's like, stop talking to your computer and give me some attention.
Yeah. I think Wednesday just found a box. She's just hiding in a box over here, but that's hilarious. Anyway, Salem's Lot from back in the day. Did you ever watch that one?
Probably.
Oh, God.
Let me see.
I gotta give you homework now. This one's from back in the day, but it's based on a Stephen King short story. No,
Was it with Rob Lowe?
no, that one was a good adaptation as well, though.
Oh, okay.
But the original one goes back further than that. And,
Gotcha.
And actually, I think it was a regular sized book, but
Oh, 79.
yeah,
1979.
and it was a like made for TV movie.
Yeah.
But Salem's Lot scared the bejesus out of me growing up. I loved it. I love that one. And I have to say, I wanted to give a shout out because Lance Kerwin, he plays the young boy that is left. Well, I guess spoiler alert, Gog hasn't seen it, but he's left. What's the word? Orphaned at some point in the movie. Lance Kerwin, he just passed away the other day, last Tuesday at 62.
Oh.
He was 62 years old.
That's too bad. That's still pretty young.
Yeah. So I wanted to mention him because the Lost Boys, or not Lost Boys, Salem's Lot and Lost Boys are like my all-time favorite, not just vampire movies, but horror movies and movies of all time.
Uh-huh.
And I'd highly recommend, if you haven't, to go ahead and go watch Salem's Lot ASAP. And the Rob Lowe one's pretty good too. The Rob Lowe one, I thought actually kind of was more like book accurate. Like the first one wasn't not, but just you'll see what I mean.
Gotcha.
You'd have to read the book too. But and then the thing about Salem's Lot is there's another version of it coming out next year. Actually, it's this year now. If it actually happens, it was supposed to be out last fall, so we'll see.
Yeah,
but I'm still looking forward to it because I love vampire movies. As a whole, are you a big vampire movie guy, or where do they?
I mean, not like top favorite of the horror genre, but I do enjoy a good vampire movie.
Gog, I would be a vampire if possible.
Yeah,
I would.
I might.
I
like What We Do in the Shadows.
That's a great one. I love it.
The movie and the series based on the movie.
I like both, but the series is kind of, as it's gone on, I feel like it's waned a little bit.
Yeah, I liked Day Shift. That was an interesting take on
that one was
the vampire movies. Of course, From Dusk Till Dawn. One of my favorites.
Great one. I love Dusk Till Dawn because it's half a Quentin Tarantino movie or type. He didn't direct it, but like where it's not. And then when it becomes a vampire movie, it becomes a very great vampire movie too.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I dug it.
And then there's what was the one with Jim Carrey that was like a comedy? Once Bitten.
I'm not sure if I've actually seen that one all the way through.
And then The Queen of the Damned.
I did not like that one so much.
You didn't like that one? It was another one that had a soundtrack.
It did.
Like
Jonathan Davis was he scored that movie from Korn.
Dracula Dead and Loving It with Leslie Nielsen.
Yes, yeah. What was the one with Eddie Murphy? Where Vampire of Brooklyn? Yeah.
So that's the interesting thing is you can really do a lot with vampires because the nature of them being so old, you can set them in any time period.
Yeah.
Like, are there any? I imagine there has to be like Western vampire combos.
Yeah, there are. I'm trying to think though, because I don't know. I don't know of any
like
to
any
tell
good
you.
ones at least.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. I'm sure there are, but I don't know of any. Like if there was any great ones.
Mm-hmm. The Underworld movies were
the Underworld movies were dope.
Big.
They were dope.
I liked those.
But they were like action movies, like
right.
I thought they were great and visually stunning, but I don't know. They wouldn't be considered that scary. But they were good. They were
Yeah.
really good. Really good.
They're more like supernatural action thriller
Yeah.
kind of.
There was a couple others I was thinking of earlier when we were talking about some of the other. Oh, so here's a there was we talked about this not too long ago. What was the Let the Right One In? That one's a great vampire movie. Yeah. And then I believe it was a vampire movie. Yeah. A girl walks alone at night or walks home alone at night, something like that. This was a movie that this lady did, and then she made a bigger movie called Bad Batch after. But I would definitely recommend it because it was a really good one. Had a good soundtrack to it too, actually.
Yeah.
So, yeah, those are some really good vampire movies to check out. But
and there was a vampire in the children's television program Big Bad Beetleborgs.
I never saw that one.
It was like we were talking about how like one thing would come out and then another thing similar to it would come out right after. It was like basically that of Power Rangers.
Nice.
But the kids, they had their Beetle suits and they looked kind of like the Power Rangers, but their like home base was a haunted house for some reason. So it had a vampire that looked like Jay Leno and like a mummy and a Frankenstein monster. It was just a really weird show.
Yeah. I like it. If you want a weird show to watch, and you have AMC, so you could watch it, Nos 4A2.
Oh, yeah.
It was written by
Not
Stephen.
Spelled out like Nosferatu, but
NOS 4A2, I believe. But that one was based off of a book written by Stephen King's son. And it's weird. It's not like your typical vampire, but it's really good. Really good.
Nice.
But yes,
if you guys out there have any of your favorite vampire movies that we missed, let us know.
I would like to know. But I'm telling you, Gog, every time I go to New Orleans, I'm like, please let a vampire bite me. Please let a vampire bite me. Please.
It's just going to be some homeless guy.
Yeah.
You think you're trying to get to a vampire, but you're just like really sick.
Yeah.
Having a like rabies infection or something.
Yeah. Did you give me vampirism? Yeah. No, I just gave you SARS. Sorry. Damn it.
Sorry.
SARSy. All right. Well, I think we'll put a stake in this show, Gog.
That's a good note to end on, I think.
Yeah, we're putting a stake.
Putting a stake in it.
All right. Well, everybody have a great week.
Yes.
Whenever you watch this, actually.
Whatever the time of whenever this is being consumed.
We'll be back with our Inside the Closet Tales from the Dorkside watch along very soon.
Oh, yeah.
We might do, let's just stack the deck here for our next, horror movie generator, and we'll just, it's a vampire movie.
I'm down. I like it.
And then we'll generate.
I think the poster turned out really well for the
Generations.
one we did there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You
that
might,
was a fun one to put together.
You might be able to could you put those in your portfolio, even though they're not real movies? Cause like,
of course,
I feel like someday you might be making real movie posters based off of your made up
do that. Just because I can doesn't mean I want to.
That'd be the easiest job ever. They're like, hey, we got 10 movies coming out next year.
Yeah.
Here you go.
Here's $50,000 to make 10 posters.
Yeah. And exposure.
Yeah. Oh yeah. We'll pay you an exposure.
Yeah. That's the currency that all creatives love to spend.
Oh yes. My favorite.
Yes. While and if you want to donate to our show, please donate some exposure.
Yes.
We
take many different forms of exposure.
Yes.
But not the inappropriate kind.
None of the inappropriate kind, if you don't mind. All right, Gog. Well, that's that. I'm out.
All right.
Have a great
Dorks ahoy.
Tales from the